swimming pool, there was a big, fat, ugly frog who was married to a cuckoo. The cuckoo could never fathom the frog's feelings for her. He was always strange and often quite suspicious. She longed to find out what he actually thought about her. So one day, she cheerfully said, "I want to go and visit my relatives in Tibet." The frog nodded his big, unsightly head impassively and belched out a barely comprehensible "go." She said goodbye to the frog and flew off in the direction of the high mountain ranges to the north of Bhutan. She fluttered in the air for a while, and when she was sure the frog could no longer see her, she swooped down and flew back on a tree near the pond. Carefully hidden among the thick foliage of the tree, the cuckoo kept a close watch on the frog. It was a warm, sunny day, and it was not long before the frog jumped up upon a large lily pad. He stretched out his limbs in all directions and gave a loud yawn, and after he had made himself comfortable, he basked at his leisure in the sun. While he lay there, he scornfully mumbled to himself, but loud enough for the other creatures in the pond to hear. "Cuckoo, cuckoo, my cuckoo." She must now be climbing over the Monla Karjum. Her front must be soaked in chapsang, and her back must be rotting with her sweat. The pond soon resounded with the loud laughter and snide giggles of the other inhabitants of the pond. The frog seemed to enjoy this immensely and kept repeating the same derogatory remarks over and over again. Seeing and hearing all this, the cuckoo shook her head in shame and humiliation as her eyes welled up with tears. So, this is what he thought of her. Suddenly, she flew out from her hiding place and confronted him. "It's not been a whole day since we parted, and this is how you ridicule and disgrace me? From now on, I shall have nothing to do with you." The frog was taken by surprise and lay there, staring at her with his bulging eyes that bulged even further. How repulsive and disgusting he looked! How could she have endured him so long? He was so ashamed of himself that he leapt into the water with a big splash and never came out again. "The water has been defiled with your lowly presence. I shall not drink it, even if I have to die of thirst," continued the cuckoo. And the peculiar marriage between the frog and the cuckoo was thus terminated.
Today I'm going to read the book The Little Mermaid, one of my favorite books. The Little Mermaid, illustrated by Bill Bryant. Far out in the deep blue ocean was a castle of the Sea King. The Sea King had 6 beautiful daughters. When the girls turned 16 years old, they were allowed to go to the surface. There they could see people who didn't have fins. Soon all of the girls had been to the surface except the youngest. She was the Little Mermaid. At last, the Little Mermaid's day finally came. When she rose out of the water, she saw a ship. The Little Mermaid didn't want to get too close, but she heard music. She swam closer so she could see the people better. There was a handsome prince on board. The party was for the prince. She didn't want to go home. Night came and the skies turned dark. The Little Mermaid saw the moon for the first time. Then it was blocked by a black cloud. She jumped when she heard a flash of lightning came. She was about to go home again, but a lightning struck the prince's ship. The ship caught fire. The brave prince began helping others get off the burning ship. The mast fell over and struck him. The little mermaid saw the prince fall into the water. She swam to find him. When she did, she pulled him up to the surface. Then she swam to the shore with the princess in her arms. As she rested his head on the sand, she sang him a song. She knew that she should leave, but she wanted to stay. The little mermaid brushed his hair from his face. The prince opened his eyes. "Are you an angel?" he asked her. The little mermaid shook his head and said no. The prince closed his eyes again. "You sound like an angel to me," he said. She bent down and kissed him. The little mermaid heard people coming. They had seen her bring the prince to shore. They were still far away, so they didn't know she was the little mermaid. She slipped away before they got too close. When they were gone, the little mermaid returned home. She told to her sisters of the wonderful prince. They reminded her that humans and mermaids could not live together. But the little mermaid knew there was someone to help her. She swam to the dark water and found the mean sea witch. She plants around her house to grab the little mermaid as she swam by. As little mermaid came to the house, the sea witch opened the door. "I know why you're here," said the sea witch. "I can give you legs and make you a human for 1 year," she said. "If the prince marries you, then you will stay a human," she said. "If not, then you will die." The little mermaid was scared but tried not to show it. "What do I have to do?" she asked the sea witch. "You have to pay my price," the sea witch said. "What do you want?" the little mermaid asked. "Your voice," said the sea witch. "Your beautiful voice." The little mermaid was shocked. How could she sing to the prince without her voice? "If you do not think the prince will love you, then go away and leave me alone," said the sea witch, moving away. "Okay, I'll do it," said the little mermaid. The sea witch turned to the little mermaid, and in her hand was a cup full of something green. "Drink this and your wish will come true," said the sea witch. The little mermaid drank it. It tasted horrible, but now she could be with the prince. Soon the little mermaid woke up. She was not in the water but on the beach. The last thing she remembered was drinking the green potion. She had an even bigger surprise when she looked down. Her fin was gone. Now she had legs. Then she heard people coming towards her. At the front was the prince. She stood up to greet them, but she fell down. The prince helped her up. He asked who she was. The little mermaid wanted to tell her who she was, the one who had saved his life, but when she opened her mouth, nothing came out. Then she remembered the sea witch had her voice. The prince led her towards his palace. He kept looking as if he knew her. Finally, he said that she looked like an angel he saw once, but that angel sang a beautiful song, so it couldn't be her. "I must get married in the next year," said the prince, "but I do not know any girls that I can talk to." The little mermaid smiled and pointed to herself. The prince laughed. "Good," he said. "Then you will stay here and teach me about girls." So the little mermaid stayed with the prince. They took long walks together and rode horses. They became great friends. One day the prince took the little mermaid for a carriage ride. He told her that he had to visit the princess that was going to marry him. He was sad. He wanted to marry a friend like her, but she must be a princess. The little mermaid could not tell him that her father was the Sea King, so she was also a princess. When the prince turned, he was not sad anymore. He had met the princess, and she was so wonderful. the little mermaid knew the prince had fallen in love with her. That night, the little mermaid stood on the beach. The year was about to come up, and the prince was not going to marry her. That means she was going to die. Then she heard her sisters calling her. Her sisters told the sea witch would let her live, but her sisters had to cut off the hair of the princess and give it to the witch. The little mermaid said she would not do that. Then you will die when the sun comes up, her sister said. And with sadness, they went back into the water. The sun came up as the year ended. Then 3 girls floated down from the clouds. There were angels who watched over people. They told the little mermaid that she was to join them. Your heart is pure and you have done deeds, one of them said. So you are to become one of us, another said. They reached out hands for her. The little mermaid floated up in the air. She had lived in the water and on land. Now she is to live in the air. She could go anywhere the wind took her. The little mermaid floated over the sleeping prince and kissed him on the cheek. She sang a song to him. Even though he was asleep, she saw that he smiled. The end.
Hello, my name is Tamanath Adhikari and I teach grade 11 and 12 at ELC High School. My subjects are English and Media Studies. As a teacher, since I'm teaching higher grades, which is grade 11 and 12, my advice or suggestion would be to make best use of everything. Starting from their cell phones, from teachers, and even television. So what I suggest my student is that to get inspiration from the kind of songs they listen to. For instance, these days youth or teenagers are into K-pops, and I looked into some of the songs by BTS, one of the popular band. So I looked into their songs, and they always they have this reference made to some of the classic books ever written. For instance, one of their songs, they have referenced to a book by Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travel, and I think they have a couple of songs in which they have referenced one of the greatest Asian artists like Murakami. So in 2 of their songs, the K-pop band BTS has referenced Murakami, one of the Asian writers, and I feel this strategy helps them to at least question themselves and makes them like wonder like how is the book related with the song, and this motivates them to read. And others would be even like musicians and rappers, and we know that these days Bebop is becoming like taking lots of producing instance producing lots of rap songs which are really followed by the youth. And I think making references and relating the pop culture and relating books motivates them to read. For example, David Bowie and other greatest musicians, they have always written songs referring to books. And as a teacher, I always try to relate what's happening, and at least few books which are always related together, and this encourages them to read. When I think about the importance of reading, I always think about this TED Talk I watched a couple of years ago. And I think even today, if you just type importance of reading, I think that will pop up. It's a small, short TED Talk by a 9-year-old kid from one of the British schools in England. And so he is invited in Warsaw in Poland to talk about importance of reading, and his name is Luke Bajkic. And just like after right after you play that video, you will be like carried away by his oratory skills. And how he starts is like he states that great readers make great writers, great writers make great communicators, and great communicators make great persuaders, and finally great persuaders make great societies. And he ends by saying that this is what the world needs now. So I always try to bring this thought within me and my students that reading is not only for academic purposes, whereas reading, to have a better society, reading is must. And if we look into all the successful people, it's always they always mention the best books they read. And I always tell them that reading will help them in exams, of course, and I tell them that to pick up a reading habit will naturally adapt that linguistic ability, which will help them in communicating with others in more professional manner, be it writing an exam, or be it communicating with elder ones. And also reading helps in understanding little kids. So that's how I try to bring out the importance of reading among students. 3 books that students should read. Okay, I would suggest Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah is actually a stand-up comedian, and he's from South Africa, and the only guy who was like selected to host one of the talk shows in America. So in that book he talks about the struggle he had, and he also mentions about the discrimination and racial injustice that happened in South Africa before apartheid. And as we go into that book, he takes us to a journey where we feel very related, we kind of relate ourselves with him. And then he also talks about women empowerment, which is really nice. And the next book would be Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. It's a really interesting book. It's a short story. It's like a 200 pages book, and that book talks about relationship between teacher and a student. And this book also talks about racial injustice. This book talks about how to forgive others, the power of forgiveness, and also it talks about being mature and taking small things, considering it, and valuing small things which we take for granted. So that's the second book. And final book, or last book number 3 would be, I think, it's a book by Bhutanese writer Sir Jurmi Chowing. So it's a collection of poetry. The name of the book is Ballad of a Minor Man in a Major Chord. So this book is a collection of poetry by Sir Jurmi Chowing, and there are so many beautiful poems written. And he talks about, he starts off with a very beautiful poem dedicated to our 4th king, King Jigme Wanchu, and he talks about how Bhutanese people celebrated his 60th birth anniversary. And then it goes on. He has like tidbits and bits of small poems here and there, and he talks about some of the good places we can go and admire. Like for instance, we can just go to Vast to admire arts and crafts. We can go to Junction bookstores to just sit there and read. And he also talks about good places and how he experienced life in Amsterdam. So these are the 3 books I would suggest students to read. To improve their reading habits, I would just say that if you have picked up the habit of reading, it's well and good, and if you haven't, then it's always better to start with small books. And I tell my students that reading in portion, say even for like it's like writing. So whenever we have writing issues, we say just go for free writing. So that's what I tell my students, like if you don't have the habit of reading, just go around and find a book or an article and then just read. Start with at least 3 minutes reading, and then once you have like started this kind of habit, like 3 minutes reading, gradually you can increase the reading time. And what happens is, in like a week or so, you'll be surprised that you have already read like books or an article for over 10 minutes. So these are like small steps which will help them to be a reader, and then this also helps them to adapt reading as their hobby. Parents play a very vital role in helping their kids read. I think some of the teachers always try to inform their parents to initiate reading at home, and be it like reading a fairy tale or reading a poetry. If we inculcate that habit of reading at home, the kids will somehow adapt reading when they grow up. And I think if I talk about the Thimphu area, I think reading would be very fun if parents were like took active role in it. For instance, if you are living in that Changjalu, some area zone, there are like good places where you can go and read, and one would be the Bookness, which is just right next to the helipad. It's a really beautiful place, and on weekends I think parents can just go there, sit upstairs, drink something, and then just sit there and read. And next thing would be, if you go to town, there are places like the Junction, which is really good. And I would suggest suggest parents to take kids out around in Thimphu, and then just sit in a library and then just read, drink a coffee or get some drinks, and spend reading time with their kids. One of the books from this library I would suggest my students to read would be the book by Mark Twain, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And this story talks about lots of moral values, lots of society's values, and also having an independent and freedom of thoughts, which takes place in this book. And I think this book is very expressive. And I'm pretty sure once you get hold of this book, you will be wanting to read part 2 or the sequel of this book, and the title is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Once you are done reading the book, please make sure that the book is back in the right place, so that when someone comes next time, he or she can easily find the book according to their call number.
example, my name is Nimongmo. I am from Ha, and I am a writer. I am the author of the book called The Imprisoned Mind. I decided to become a writer because I was a very passionate reader, and I really liked the way the writers had expressed their thoughts and feelings in the book, and I wanted to become one of them. I draw inspiration from lots of people. The book I read, the authors or the writers who have started from scratch, like J.K. Rowling, Toni Morrison, and all the Buddhist writers who are doing great despite a very small platform. I would say it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to think you are not good enough. It is okay to make grammatical mistakes. It is okay to not to know how to structure your words. As long as you don't give up, you are a winner. I have recently read a book called One Indian Girl by Chetan Bhagat. I like the way the protagonist is portrayed in this book. She says, let me warn you, you may not like me too much. Number 1, because I make a lot of money. 2, I have an opinion on everything. 3, I have had a boyfriend before. Okay, maybe 2. Now, if I was a guy, you would be okay with all this. But since I am a girl, these 3 things don't really make me too likable, do they? Since I firmly believe in women empowerment, I like the way how the protagonist is portrayed in this book. As per my perspective, if you are not a good reader, you won't be able to be a good writer. It is through the books you read, you grab ideas, you develop your skills as a writer, you create your imagination power and creativity, and in this way you will be able to express your thoughts and ideas in a beautiful way. Becoming, it is a memoir of former First Lady of United States, Michelle Obama. I Am Malala. It is autobiographical, written by Malala Yousafzai, co-written with Christina Lamb. It is a story of a girl who stood for education and was shot by Taliban. You Can Win by Chef Kera. It says winners don't do different things, they do things differently. Mostly from library when in school, and later I started purchasing books. I have few collections, and at my house also, my brothers, my sister, my in-laws, they have their own collections, and my friends also have, so I take from them at times. It is okay to leave a book incomplete if you don't like it. It is not necessary to compel yourself to read a book which you don't like. Go and grab another book which you can understand better, and in this way you can develop your reading habits. In my book, The Imprisoned Mind, I have put so much values and morals that I have learned till now through motivational books and motivational videos and TED Talks that I watch. I have concluded my book in such a way that at the end everybody will have a very neutral feeling, no hatred, no grudges. This book will teach you what holding grudges will do to you, how important relationship is, how important communication is in a relationship. It talks about, I even highlighted on mental health, divorce, self-respect and self-development, and I have focused on the quote which says, never generalize. I'm gonna read my favorite excerpt from my book. I'll read two, one by Yangchin and one by Namgye. Yangchin says, everything felt so particularly great as I liberated myself from the prison of my bogus thoughts. I have escaped the hardest prison, my mind. I am open to love again, commit mistakes, learn, be stronger, and start from the very beginning once again. Namge says, I had once heard that forgiving is to set someone free from prison. Now that I did, I realized that the prisoner was me. I escaped the hardest prison to escape from, my mind, and I feel deliriously delighted about it.